Hey friends, this is Genevieve and I talk about creative flow and how to stay in it. And I want to talk about today perfectionism. So this is for you who are struggling with perfectionism. And you see, I had to learn the consequences of perfectionism, and I hope that what I share with you can keep you missing out on life. You see, my perfectionism got me fired. Yep, I was taking so long on so many of my projects that I couldn't seem to control all those voices in my head with like, no, not that, or revise that, delete button. And I was just stuck in analysis paralysis, and I just couldn't move forward with any of my work. And I ended up submitting less than what my colleagues had submitted, and my productivity was shit. And even though I had worked so hard for so many hours on that project, my perfectionism had nothing to show for it. So a few days before our meeting with a Fortune 500 CMO, my senior manager, he looked at the work that I had submitted and asked me, "Is this all you've done?" And I felt so ashamed. I mean, I had worked hours and hours, but I had worked on perfectionism, not the actual task at hand, and I ended up getting booted off that project. And when I got booted, I had to learn the hard way that all the insecurities I had about chasing perfectionism were in fact myths. And hopefully you don't end up in a confronting situation like mine. So let's get started out by talking about why is perfectionism debilitating. You see, perfectionism, it's a dangerous trap. It's a constant race of comparing yourself to some gold standard that exists in your imagination, and it's not even real. When you chase perfectionism, you're actually chasing something that doesn't even exist. And then that keeps you in a never-ending loop of unmet expectations. And so you keep on going in this mentality that you're never good enough. But frankly, you're good enough just as you are. You don't have to do anything to be perfect. You are perfect just as you are in all your humanity. Remember, the key word here is humanity. You are not a bot or some machine. And remember, those do break down. Remember, you got to do all those software updates or get your computer fixed and all these things. There is no such thing as perfect. So, what causes perfectionism? Ultimately, it's the fear of judgment or rejection. We worry that if we don't show up, that we'll be rejected, we'll be fired, unliked, judged, and all those myths. So I want to talk about the 5 common myths of perfectionism that perfectionists say and the truth behind them. Myth number 1, I just have high standards. Okay, so it's one thing to pursue excellence and want to produce quality work, but the perfectionist mentality is based on this life or death mentality of failure and doom. And so that means there's no true pursuit in excellence. It's just more like an obligation. It's a fear. And when you are in that mentality, you're actually not even pursuing anything. You're just expecting. And who expects a baby to walk on its first try, or even the 100th? And also, when you're so focused on the perfectionism, you're focused on everything that you're doing wrong. And that's not excellence mentality. That's failure mentality. Myth number 2, perfection means I'll be successful. The truth is, haven't you heard my story? Most perfectionists end up with productivity issues and procrastination. Now, trying to achieve perfectionism puts so much pressure on us that it ends up causing analysis paralysis, overwhelm, you know what I'm talking about, leading to less output and avoidance. And this means missed deadlines, late work, which can then lead to lost contracts, lost clients, or lost job. And perfectionism is actually self-defeating because perfection is impossible. Remember, we're human, and you can be proud of your work, even if there are flaws. Myth number 3, People will like me better if my work is perfect. As you demand perfectionism in yourself, you become demanding of everyone else around you, and all these unmet expectations can actually make you kind of a grouch, unpleasant to be around. And no one likes feeling like they're never good enough or not meeting your standards, and then you end up pushing people away. So instead, consider progress over perfection. Myth number 4, perfection does exist. Look at how so-and-so was able to do XYZ. Oh my God, that's like the biggest comparison trap. We have no idea what someone else's strengths and weaknesses are, and we don't know what their history is. And when we focus comparing ourselves on what others are doing, we forget to celebrate our gifts. We have no idea of what the other person's journey was, and it's not any of our business. Gotta mind our own, right? And they may have had help from mentors, a team, and that goes to my next and last myth of perfectionism. Myth number 5, I have to be perfect or else I won't be liked. Perfectionists often end up isolated in their head and work, and then they work alone because they're so afraid of what others will think that they spin their wheels all alone, too afraid to ask for help. And this leads to a downward spiral. Oh my God, how many of you have been in this place? And this ends up creating barriers around others instead of connection. And the source of connection often comes from being vulnerable, willing to ask for help, willing to say, hey, what do you think of this? Even when it's not perfect. And that's why it's so important to have mentors, coaches, and team members whom you can ask and lean on so that you can grow in your work. So I'd love to hear which of these myths resonates with you most and how you're working on that in the comments below. Now, before we go, I want to share some reminders, affirmations with you for whenever you feel your perfectionist tendencies rearing their heads. All right, let's go. Yep. I am enough just by being. That's right. You don't have to do anything to be worthy of love because you are enough. I value learning more than being right. As Osho says, if life was perfect, then we'd all be dead. The whole point of life is growth, which is why life is so perfectly imperfect. I am exactly where I need to be right now. Self-acceptance of where you are on your path is the first step to personal freedom, and that is the ultimate success. Inner freedom. Done is better than perfect. No more beating yourself up for another day gone by and not having finished that draft. Just get it done and watch how you grow from there. I choose consistency over perfection. The more I show up and share, the more I grow. And I love learning more than anything in this world. I don't have to be perfect to be powerful. Your power comes not from knowing who you are, not what you've produced or what your accomplishments are. Your power comes from your resilience to know that every day you are remembering that you are extraordinary already. Big love to you for being exactly as you are. Love you. Keep making that work. And thanks for watching, you extraordinary human being.